There he is. So you know, we've gone through here, we've been fishing for an hour or so, and we've caught a fair amount of fish. I try to tell people it's more importantly where you're fishing than necessarily the bait you're fishing. You know, here you have this stretch of water willows, and you could realistically pick this thing apart. There's a huge edge there, so you have to find, no different than a cove or even a lake, is points are the key. So you have points of it or isolated patches. This is the textbook spot here, just this little isolated clump that sticks out away from the rest of them. I mean, that would be a textbook spot. I would say if there was a lot of fish along this little stretch, that would be a key place to look, is that little isolated patch right there. So as we're going down this stretch right here, you know, it all looks basically the same, and a lot of times you just have to use your peripheral vision. Even though I'm pitching right there, I'm looking at my next cast, I'm picking out the points and the little pockets, and it's one of those things where you just go along and it's going to develop. Every day is a little bit different. It's one of those things you just have to just kind of keep trying until something really develops. But the key part I can always tell everybody is bass are an edge species, so they're going to relate to the edge, and there's not much here, but sometimes you get to these vast big massive areas of vegetation like Florida and all that, and it can get overwhelming, and those are the type places where you have to remember it's a discipline thing, that bass are an edge species, and you just need to fish the edges, concentrate on the edges. And then if I got to a certain spot, and let's say I caught 3 or 4 on maybe a 50-yard stretch along the edge, then you maybe want to turn around and maybe hit that area a little more thorough. Most of the time, the fish you have that are going to be active, they're going to be relating to that edge. Sometimes some of the fish that might be inactive will get back in the thick stuff. When I'm fishing, you know, heavy cover, especially vegetation like this, I prefer, you know, flipping, I prefer it to be bright and sunny, because I feel like it puts the fish, it positions the fish to be more predictable. If I was just completely in search mode here, I would probably just be going down along here concentrating on the edges, just because I'm able to cover more water that way. So here's kind of a textbook spot right here. We got a little pocket, but as you can see, you know, we got this vast amount of water willow here, but this is a key spot. It's a point right at the mouth of this pocket. There's kind of a mat right here, and just a really textbook spot. So I'm really going to pick this spot apart. I'm going to first pitch on the edges, and then when I get up closer, I can use this 3/4 ounce weight to drop it right in on top of those fish, because sometimes those fish will swim out and hit it on the edge, or sometimes they want it dropped right on top of their head, right in the heart of it. You know, the bait selection I don't think is as critical as where you're putting it, and more of, you know, how I think the retrieve and the action of the bait is way more important than necessarily the bait itself. You know, so here we've got some wood mixed in with the water willows. Those are the things you always want to look for too, is, you know, if you get a consistent stretch of water willows or vegetation, and then you have a log or a stump mixed into it, those are the sweet spots, or, you know, something that stands out a little bit. I mean, it doesn't need to be a log, it could be something man-made, like an old cement pillar or a rock or anything. Those are the places to really pay attention to. Here's a perfect little isolated clump, so we'll hit the edge of it for starters, and there he is. Oh, not what we had expected. I know you're a little small to play that game there, little bass. But see, so now here we kind of run out of water willows, but there's still some good potential on here. As you can see, we've got these undercut banks with some shade. That's another great place for these fish to be hanging out at. So this is a creek, so the current flows through here, and basically it's undercutting the bank, but you have your top layer of trees and roots and grasses and all that. But any creek or river you get where it starts to undercut, you know, the current will wash it out, and it creates a little cave or a lip or an edge there. And a lot of times you get the shade, as you can see, but then you'll get a little lip there, and those fish can tuck up underneath in that shade, and it's a great ambush spot for a bass to sit up there. They're cool, they're in the shade, and then any bait fish swims along, or a little creature bait or a jig or something like that comes along, they can just swim out of there and ambush it. You know, you come here in the morning and it's all shaded, but you get into the middle of the day like this and you tend to get those more isolated spots of shade that will help position the fish a little bit better. But then you'll get key little features. You'll have a brush pile or a lay down tree or a tree stump or something like that, and those are the places to really pay attention to. So that's just a textbook spot. Here you got a tree root there, you know, a tree stump down in the water, so fish can actually probably tuck up underneath there, and that's definitely a spot there. Yes, worth a couple of texts. I can't control the size. Not a giant, but that was an undercut bank with a tree root there. Even if, you know, people are like, well, that's a little fish, guys, that still gives me a tremendous amount of confidence. And you know, if you're learning this stuff, that still helps, because next time that could be a, instead of a 10-incher, could be a 10-pounder. I mean, we're just going down this edge. You know, it's just a narrow band, probably 3 to 5 foot of water willows here, and I'm just trying to cover as much water as I can, because typically when these fish are in these setups, they're setting up to ambush prey, and they're going to bite it pretty quickly. I mean, it's a reaction strike. I mean, it gets in there, and usually on that initial fall or the next hop, they're going to get it. But here's a beautiful little pocket here, so we'll hit one side, make a pitch into the back of it, and right here to the next pocket. There's one. Oh, there's not a big one, but a little bit better. There we go. Pop it out. So when you're, you know, fishing a stretch like this, you know, it all kind of looks the same, and you know, the fish are on the edges, and what do you look for? So we've got the little pockets, but then you come to a spot like this, and here's a little stick up in the water, little log or little lay down or whatever, but then there's also some matted water willow there, so it's created a little bit of a mat. So that's something that's definitely unique to this stretch, and those are the key places to definitely pay attention to. Creates a little more shade right there, a little bit better ambush spot. So those are the key places to look for, is the cover versus the structure. There might be fish in a particular cover, and a lake might be covered up with a particular cover, but there's still the structure that's going to set the spots apart from each other. We're going to keep looking for more of those, and hopefully some more fish. So here you got a little point, you got a little bit of a mat back there. So here we've got this clump that comes out here a little bit farther, so I can actually just pitch up along it, and I can actually work that jig just kind of parallel to it and cover a lot of it that way. And you get little holes back in there. A nice isolated little clump of water willows here. So we're just going to hit both sides of it. Oh, there he is! Oh, right on that isolated piece. And that was just textbook. Not the biggest fish in here, but you know, as far as being prepared and really knowing where to watch, that was a key spot. Nice. We went down this whole stretch without so much as a bite, and then we get to the one isolated piece of cover, and it's an odds game. You know, eventually you hit enough of those isolated pieces of cover and you're going to get bit. So now we're getting, you know, more sparse. We're going to make longer pitches just because the fish are a little more open and we don't want to spook them. There he is. Right on the edge of that, just pitching that little creature bait up there, and uh-oh, saw the weed move. Did you get it? Yep. That's pretty cool. Little guy. So there it is, guys. We've been fishing around here. We've caught a fair amount of fish. We've caught some on a jig. We've caught some on a creature bait, some on a beaver. It's just kind of the reminder of these fish are here. If they're going to bite, they're typically going to throw whatever you're going to throw in there. So Remember, it's way more important where you're fishing than necessarily the bait that you're fishing. So.